Tonight's story takes us back to the wild frontier, where fire, blood, and choice shape the fate of a valley. It's the tale of a quiet cowboy, an orphan girl who lost everything, and a preacher who tried to burn the world clean. Before we begin, write into the comments the name of the city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story. Now settle in and enjoy. The prairie had gone quiet in that peculiar way it does after chaos, as if the land itself was listening for a reason to breathe again. I was oiling the hinges on my barn door when the wind shifted and carried a scent I'll never mistake. Smoke, tallow, and the cold metal tang of spent cartridges. I saddled up without thinking. A man who lives alone learns to trust the messages of wind and light. By the time I reached the ridge above Coal Post, there wasn't much left to count. The church roof had folded like a bad hand. The livery was a black rib cage, still steaming. And the main street, where I bought coffee in silence for years, was a scrawl of char and brass. I should have turned back. I didn't. I found her behind the well where the water had boiled and fled, a small figure curled between two toppled rain barrels, soot-caked and still. When I lifted her, she weighed no more than an empty promise. Her dress, once blue, had turned the color of regret. She didn't cry. She just watched me with a gaze too steady for a child and held a rag doll by the ankle like a lifeline frayed thin. "My name's Wade Harrow," I said, voice low, like speaking to a skittish colt. "I've got water and a stove that still listens." She blinked once. Then her fingers, burned at the tips, reached for my canteen. She drank slow. No coughing, no fear, just the careful certainty of someone who had already decided to survive. I wrapped her in my coat and rode for home with the sun, sliding off the world and coyotes arguing with the dark. I didn't ask questions. She had none to give. Sometimes the kindest thing you can offer a living thing is space enough to be alive. Back at the ranch, I fed the stove cedar and beans and the last good onion, tucked her into the bunk near the warmest wall, and set a bucket of water within reach. Only then did she speak, a single iron-soft word that felt like a door unlocking. "Lena." I nodded. "All right, Lena. Rest." Outside, the night sifted itself into silence. Inside, a future I hadn't ordered lay breathing slow beside my fire. I woke to the gentle clink of enamel on wood. The girl was up, holding the tin cup with both hands, sipping as if taught by a miserly teacher. Daylight was gray and honest. I stirred the pot, split the last cornbread loaf, and pushed the plate toward her. She ate like a soldier, efficient, grateful to nothing but calories. Only after the second slice did I ask, "Anyone left?" Her eyes drifted to the door and stayed there a beat too long. No, the word didn't echo. It landed and sat between us like a fact that would not move. I nodded and stood to fetch the blanket I kept for bad winters. When I draped it over her shoulders, she didn't flinch, but her jaw set like a person taking inventory of what still belonged to her. By noon, the wind had learned a new song. Hoofbeats were coming, measured, many, a rhythm with command threaded through it. Not cavalry. Cavalry shouts to remind itself it exists. These were quieter and closer to land. I set the kettle back on and reached for my rifle, only to set it down again. Some doors you open with empty hands, or you don't open at all. The riders crested my north pasture with their saddles low and eyes higher. She stiffened, and I felt the tremor run through her like a wire pulled taut. Her hand found the rag doll without looking. I stood in the doorway and let the men read me. Clean floor, banked fire, a pan airing on the rail, no whiskey, no hurry. The one at their center wore trailed dust like a uniform and a star that had seen honest work. Sheriff Ezra Pike. We'd traded grunts over coffee for years. He dismounted without theatrics and removed his hat. "Mornin', Wade. We're counting the living." I stepped aside so he could see her. He looked a long time, like a man searching a horizon for weather. "Any names?" "Lena," I said, "and hungry." He nodded once. "Town's gone. Tracks say rustlers, not Comanche. But stories are cheap when fear gets thirsty." He glanced over his shoulder at the men. "If the gang rides back through, they'll look for loose ends. You just made yourself one." I shrugged, as if I hadn't already heard that verdict from my own bones. Then we'll tighten it. The girl watched the exchange like a chess player in a world that still used checkers. When the sheriff left, he did it with a warning folded inside a courtesy. We'll circle at dusk. Signal if you need the law faster than prayer. I didn't answer. I've never been faithful in either. By late afternoon, the prairie had put on its gold shirt and gone quiet for supper. I mended harness, cleaned the Winchester, and set a second place at the table. She watched everything like she meant to remember it well enough to teach someone else someday. You got people somewhere? I asked finally. She turned the rag doll in her hands. Stitched eyes, one boot. Used to. What was the last thing you remember before the fire? She looked past me and let the world split open. A song. Mama sang. Not words. Just the part that makes the words go. Then glass fell like rain. She lifted her chin. Then I ran. I didn't ask where to. She was here. That was enough. I slid a small locket from my pocket. The kind of foolishness that still finds a home in a man's shirt after he knows better. Inside was my brother at 16, the last year before the river taught us it didn't owe us anything. I set it on the table, not as a tale, just as a bridge. That your boy? She asked. My brother. The answer tasted like something I'd reheated too many times. The river took him fast. She nodded, as if lost were a language with only a few verbs, and we both already knew them. Then she pushed the rag doll toward me. This is June. She paused. June's not scared of the dark, but she hasn't learned stairs. I pretended to consider this problem seriously. We'll teach her. And that was how a home begins. Not with vows, but with ridiculous sentences that dare tomorrow to come true. After sundown, the sheriff's riders returned with a temper like flint. They'd found sign of the gang. Iron-shod horses, hurried cook fires, a route bending west toward the Badlands. Ezra Pike didn't waste our time. We think they left one watcher to tidy loose ends. His eyes slid to the girl. If he sees she lived, he'll try and fix that. I imagine he'll try, I said. Pike gave me that narrow smile, man, where when they've already spent their luck elsewhere. You got a way of staying uninteresting, Wade. Keep it. We'll be back before the moon's full. The men rode off, shrinking into the pasture's long sigh. I barred the door, banked the coals, and laid the Winchester within reach but not in sight. The girl slept finally, June tucked on her arm, jaw set even in rest. Somewhere out there, a man had a ledger that needed balancing. I pressed my palm to the floor and felt the earth hum, as if the land had its own heartbeat and, tonight, it had decided to keep time with ours. He came at dawn dressed like a roomer, coat the color of road dust, hat low, patience his posture. The kind of man who makes a killing not by speed, but by doing nothing until motion would be considered rude. I saw him first in the reflection of my kettle, a trick an old drover taught me. There's always another horizon if you polish one. I stepped onto the porch and let the door click shut behind me. Coffee? I asked. He smiled without his eyes. I'm looking for something smaller. He tilted his head, listening to the house breathe. A survivor? You won't find one here. He studied me like a surveyor, measuring what terrain might cost him. The sheriff says the town died fast. Fast is good. Fast leaves less talk. You a man who enjoys quiet? I asked, only when I'm the one making it. Behind me, a floorboard answered the child wait. The man heard it. Men like him are paid to hear what the rest of us pretend we didn't. His hand drifted near his belt. He wasn't going to draw on me first. He was going to counter polite, and then make a hole where none needed making. I didn't move. You ride alone? I asked. He smirked. I ride enough. The wind chose that moment to push the world a few inches. A hawk called high. Two faraway hoofbeats found harmony. Sheriff Pike had an early start. The watcher in gray did the math and didn't like the sum. His eyes shifted, left then back. You got yourself a problem. Harrow, you gathering strays that don't belong to you. Everything that breathes belongs somewhere, I said, and some places are a body bag. He tipped his hat. Enjoy your coffee. He rode off slow, the way men retreat, when they want to leave fear in their footprints. I watched him shrink until he joined the line where earth shakes hands with sky. Only then did I exhale. Inside, Lena crouched by the stove, June clutched tight, eyes like flint in rainy weather. "He'll come back," she said. "Yes." "What will we do?" I poured 2 cups we didn't need and set them to steaming. "Teach June stairs." She almost smiled. The lesson would begin at dusk. We trained for the quiet things first. Where a heel should land on a board that won't sing, how a latch whispers when it lies, which loose floor plank turns honest under a woolen sock. I showed her where to hide that wouldn't feel like hiding, the crawl space behind the wood box, the cupboard with the busted hinge that looks locked but forgives trespassers. All the while I told the house we were borrowing its luck, and the house, old and dutiful, agreed to be generous. By evening the sheriff returned with 3 men, and the kind of face that doesn't carry news. It just lets the facts walking ahead of it. "We pinned the gang's trail west," Pike said, "but your gray ghost turned back. He's pruning." "Then we won't be the only bush cut tonight," I said. Pike's gaze drifted to Lena. He wasn't a man for soft looks, but he had one now, tucked behind a badge like a photograph he meant to keep private. "We can move her to the jail. It's ugly, but it's brick." "She won't sleep," I answered. And Lena confirmed it by shaking her head with the stubbornness of a person who has seen the world's worst room and will not voluntarily visit its cousin. Pike pinched the bridge of his nose. "I can leave Cooper and Hale on your north line. If the watcher rides in, he'll have to pay twice." "Pay thrice," I said. "I'm still here." He grunted. It counted as a handshake. That night, the prairie wore its black dress, and the stars were a jury. I sat with my back to the stove and the rifle loose across my knees. The child June and Fear slept in a pile by the warm wall. Each time the wind climbed the porch and peered through the cracks, I pictured gray coat, quiet saddle, the sound of someone who believed in tidy endings. Toward midnight the horses on the north line spoke up, one of those warning snorts they issue when something moves wrong. I nudged the coals, and the house held its breath. Outside, a voice I already knew called to the door like a neighbor. "Mr. Harrow, you got something that belongs to other men. I'm here to collect." I stood, set the rifle back on its pegs where sheriffs can see you're not going to complicate the paperwork, and unbarred the door. "You're early," I said. "I hate to rush goodbyes," the gray coat replied, stepping into the lantern's reach. He had one hand on a short shotgun and the other on a principal. Nobody walks away from what he burned. Only then did I notice his coat was wet at the hem, not with dew, but with the kind of dark that tells a story in one color. Somewhere back along my fence, a man had learned how quick a hired life can empty out. "You met Cooper," I said. "Hale," he corrected. "Cooper's learning to be quiet permanently." The facts settled like iron filings on a magnet. Pike's outline rose from the dark behind my guest. Revolver already part his hand. "Drop it." Gray did something I respect him for as long as I breathe. He didn't. He stepped left and found the only sliver of porch that could confuse 2 lines of sight, then fired once, a roar that ate the distance and fed it back as pain. The shot wasn't for me. It wasn't for Pike. It was for the lamp. Darkness fell. The house remembered its lesson and held still. I grabbed Lena and June with one motion and pushed them into the cupboard that never locked. "Breathe small," I whispered. "Make fear run out of air before you do." Outside, men chose side between law and blood. Inside, a girl chose stairs, one careful step at a time. The night Coal Post died had left a mark on more than just its ashes. Out here on the frontier, stories didn't take long to grow legs, and by the time the sheriff's riders left my place, I knew trouble would circle back. I had seen the look in Lena's eyes, the quiet steadiness of someone who already understood that safety was just another word men liked to pretend meant forever. The girl had settled into my cabin faster than I expected. She ate like she meant it, drank in silence, and listened with the intensity of a soldier. But every creak in the floorboard set her jaw tight. Every gust of wind against the shutters sent her fingers searching for the rag doll she called June. Children aren't supposed to live that way, but she wasn't a child the same as others. She was an orphan born twice, once by birth, once by fire. That night, after the lawmen left, I set her to a small lesson. If you're going to stay here, Lena, you've got to know the house. She blinked at me, unsure. The house remembers things, I said, where it groans, where it whispers, where it hides. If trouble comes, and it will, you'll need to know how to move so quiet that even fear can't find you. She nodded. No argument, no hesitation. Just acceptance, as if she had already been waiting for instruction. Together we walked the boards barefoot, learning which planks betrayed a man's weight and which carried a secret like a friend. I showed her the cupboard with the broken hinge. It looked shut but never locked. I showed her the crawl space behind the wood box, where the chimney's warmth kept out the frost. She listened, memorized, repeated. June sat tucked under her arm, a silent witness to our pact. By midnight, the prairie wind had shifted. It carried the scent of horses, one, maybe two. My hand found the Winchester, but I didn't rack it. Sometimes steel makes too much noise. Instead, I banked the coals low and pressed Lena's hand. Cupboard, I whispered. She slid inside without protest, her eyes steady as the door closed over her. The knock came soft, deliberate, not a neighbor's knock. A man who enjoys his own patience. Mr. Harrow, a voice drawled, smooth, low, familiar. You've got something that doesn't belong to you. I've come to collect. The gray coat, the same shadow from coal post, tidy as ever. I opened the door just enough to let the lamplight spill across him. He looked the same, calm, polite, carrying violence the way a preacher carries scripture. His hand hovered near the short-barreled shotgun at his hip. She belongs to no man, I said. He smiled without his eyes. Everything belongs. To someone, or to the grave. The way he said it, I knew there was no arguing. His job wasn't to negotiate. It was to erase. Before I could move, Sheriff Pike's voice cut from the dark. Step away, Ghost. The gray coat turned his head slightly, the smile never shifting. Evening, Sheriff. Fine night for tidying loose ends. Drop it, Pike ordered, but Ghost was clever. His shotgun roared once, not at me or Pike, but at the lamp. Glass shattered, flame died, and the cabin fell into black. For a breath, the world belonged to him. I moved the way cattlemen learned to, by feel, not sight. My hand found the iron kettle by the stove. I nudged it with my boot, let it skid across the floor. Ghost cursed when it clipped his shin, stumbling just enough. Pike's revolver barked, and the shotgun clattered to the porch. But Ghost didn't fall. He dove off into the dark, boots pounding. A second set of hooves answered. He hadn't ridden alone. Within moments, they were gone, swallowed by the cottonwoods west. Pike spat into the dirt. That one won't quit easy. Inside the cupboard, Lena's eyes glowed faint in the embers, calm but sharp. She stepped out slow, June clutched tight. He'll come back, she said. Yes, I answered. Her next words came soft, almost a whisper, but steady enough to chill me. Are we ready? I looked around my small cabin, at the stove that had remembered warmth, at the floorboard that now held her footsteps as secrets, at the cupboard that refused to be a prison. And I thought, maybe, just maybe we could be. The morning after Ghost slipped through our fingers, the house smelled of cold ash and sour coffee. Sheriff Pike hadn't left. He leaned against the jamb like he'd been carved there, eyes red from keeping watch. Cooper dozed in a chair with a bandage leaking pink across his thigh. And Lena sat cross-legged by the stove, June on her lap, quiet as snowfall but with eyes that never blinked too long. I poured coffee thick enough to stand a spoon in, handed a tin cup to the boy we'd roped the night before, Eli. He'd called himself. He was young, too young for the sort of scars on his knuckles. He held the cup with both hands, staring into the steam as if it might show him a road back to whatever childhood he'd skipped. My name's Eli, he muttered again, like confessing it might reduce the weight on his chest. I didn't start with the serifs. I got collected. Pike straightened, voice graveled deep. Collected how? Eli's jaw worked. Preacher Kane. He finds boys nobody else wants. Feeds them words so they sound like truth. Calls us angels. Says the world needs cleansing and with a fire. He swallowed hard. Coal post wasn't cleansing. It was murder. The words hung in the air like smoke that refuses to leave. "Where's Kane now?" I asked. Eli's eyes flicked west. Fraction Canyon. Box land. Sun only touches it a few hours a day. They've got a spring that looks like a grin, and 2 sentries up top. Ghost runs the north lip. Pike's mouth tightened. That canyon's a coffin. You sure this ain't just a sermon of its own? Eli met Lena's stare, and something in her steady gaze forced his chin down. I'm sure. That was enough for me. Sometimes the land chooses its witnesses, and I reckon this boy was one. We moved before noon, riding hard. Cooper stayed behind, blood loss anchoring him to my cabin. Lena keeping watch with eyes that had already learned too much. Pike and I took Eli with us, Dusty trotting loose-limbed under me. The trail west folding into mesas like a wound hiding its scar. By mid-afternoon, we'd reached Fraction. The canyon yawned beneath us, sun bleeding through in narrow slashes. From the rim we could see Kane's camp. Tents neat as pews, men moving with the precision of a congregation drilled too often. Kane himself paced slow, coat straight, hands behind his back. He didn't look like a preacher. He looked like a man who had learned how to wear authority the way wolves wear hunger. Ghost stood above on the north lip, glass to his eye, shoulder stiff from the graze Pike had given him. He hadn't seen us yet. That was luck, and luck doesn't last. I pulled a mirror shard from my saddlebag, an old signaling trick I hadn't used since the cattle wars. 2 quick flashes to Pike. Wait. Then I crawled sideways across the grit until the wind would carry my voice down. Kane! I called, low but sharp enough to cut. His head lifted. He didn't flinch, didn't reach for iron. He just smiled thin, like he'd been expecting me all along. Mr. Harrow, you should be at your ranch, mending fences, not trespassing on holy ground. You call Coal Post holy? I asked. He spread his arms, voice carrying with ease. Coal Post was diseased. I burned it clean. The ashes will feed better things. You burn mothers and children. Better that they die pure than live stained, he answered. Tone calm as a teacher explaining arithmetic. Above, Ghost shifted, his boots sliding against loose shale. Pebbles skipped down the cliff. For the first time, Kane's smile twitched. He glanced up and Ghost stiffened. I saw it then, the split second where pride and fear wrestled in his chest. He leaned too far, and the rim betrayed him. His foot slipped, his weight dropped, and suddenly Ghost was hanging from the cliff face, cursing in a language made of regret. Kane didn't move to help. He simply folded his arms. Let him learn. I slid belly first to the edge. Arm out. Take my hand, Ghost. His eyes burned hate and confusion. Why? Because falling teaches nothing, I said. He hesitated, then grabbed my wrist. Pike braced behind me, Eli clutching my belt like a drowning child. We hauled Ghost over the rim, his body hitting the dirt with sound halfway between relief and rage. Kane's voice floated up, smooth as ever. Mercy is an expensive habit, Mr. Harrow. One day it will bankrupt you. I leaned over, letting him see my face in full. Not today. Kane tipped his hat and gave the order. The camp below folded in minutes. Tents struck, fires doused, men vanishing into goat trails like smoke sucked by wind. Fraction Canyon emptied as if it had never been filled. Pike holstered his iron, jaw set. We lost him again. I looked at Ghost, who sat breathing hard. Pride cracked open. Maybe not. Maybe we gained something he didn't plan to lose. Ghost spat blood into the dust. What do you want from me? Directions, I said, and a choice you won't get twice. His eyes narrowed. You preaching now, Harrow? No, I answered. I'm changing the teacher. We made a fireless camp in the lee of a split boulder, the kind that had once been part of a mountain, but decided to live on its own terms. Ghost sat with his back against a stone, shoulder bandaged in whiskey-soaked cloth, breathing ragged. Pike crouched near him, revolver resting easy across his knee. Eli hovered close, not sure if he was watching a prisoner or a brother. Kane's next move? Pike asked. His voice was steady, but I could hear the grind of impatience in it. Ghost worked his jaw as though chewing glass. Carry and wash, he muttered at last. There's a ghost trail, narrow, shale mean. He can slip 36 men through before anyone knows it's not thunder. From there, he'll strike Hickory Bend, burn close to the rails, make sure every conductor carries a sermon to the next town. I stirred the dirt with a stick, drawing lines like a teacher. If we push hard, we reach Hickory Bend first. But Kane's counting on panic. He wants rifles out, shutters broken, people shouting in the street. I looked at Pike. You can stop that. Pike nodded, slow. I'll send word through the wire. Get the sheriff's cousin to clear the streets. If Kane shows up to a ghost town, his sermon finds no ears. Ghost gave a dry laugh, bitter as old coffee. You really think silence scares him? He'll burn empty buildings just the same. Maybe, I said, but fire without witnesses is just wasted wood. Men like Kane need an audience. The moon pulled itself over the ridge while we argued. Eli finally spoke, quiet but firm. He doesn't care about the killing. He cares about the stories after. That's why he let us talk in coal post before he lit the match. That's why he'll come to Hickory Bend. I studied the boy. His eyes were hollow but sharp, like someone who had stared too long at flames and found shapes in them. He wasn't wrong. Kane wanted echoes, not corpses. Corpses were just tools. By dawn, we were riding hard, splitting paths. Pike went for the wire station, his deputies riding wide. I cut with Ghost and Eli along Dead Man's Shelf, a knife blade trail scratched into the cliff where the wind howls like it wants your name. Dusty knew the path better than I did. She placed each hoof like a prayer. Ghost's horse stumbled twice, forcing him to grab the mane with his bad arm, swearing all the while. Eli rode light, like a boy born for narrow ledges. We reached Hickory Bend by late afternoon. The town smelled of coal smoke and bread. Folks lingered on porches, not knowing the sermon galloping toward them. I went straight for the telegraph office. Send to Pike. Kane en route. Empty streets. Buckets, not bullets. The operator blinked at the words. Buckets. Fire's coming, I said. Best fight fire with water. Outside, I found Myers, the sheriff's cousin. He had Pike's square jaw, but not his patience. Heard you're stirring trouble, Harrow, he said, hand twitching near his belt. I'm stopping it. I told him. Get your people into the churchyard and the well yard. No guns, no shouting. Just quiet. He scoffed. You want us to hide like rabbits? I want you alive. I snapped. Kane feeds on noise. Don't give him a meal. Something in my tone, or maybe the scars on my face, finally convinced him. Order spread, and slowly, Hickory Bend folded itself inward. Windows went blind, porches emptied. Even dogs were pulled inside. The street went still. We waited. Near dusk, dust rose on the south road. A column of riders appeared, neat as soldiers, Kane at the front. His coat caught the last light, gleaming like stolen gold. He raised a hand, and the seraphs fanned out, expecting gunfire from every shutter. Instead, they found silence. Kane reined in, studying the empty street. He smiled, small and knowing. Mr. Harrow, he called, his voice rolling like scripture. You emptied the theater. I stood alone in the middle of the street, hat low, hands open. You brought the wrong play. Behind him, Ghost shifted in his saddle, pistol in hand. His voice cut sharp. No more sermons. Kane, no more fire. The seraph stirred, uncertain. Kane turned in his saddle, calm as a Sunday. My son, he said softly, have you returned to the flock or come to betray it? Ghost's jaw tightened. I was never your son. And just like that, the air changed. The rider's knuckles whitened on reins, hooves pawed the dirt, and the whole town held its breath. The silence in Hickory Bend was so heavy you could hear the flies buzzing over the water trough. Kane sat tall in his saddle at the head of his riders, coat gleaming in the last of the daylight. Behind him, Ghost's pistol trembled slightly in his hand. Not from fear, but from the weight of what it meant to finally turn against a man who had owned his shadow for too long. Kane didn't reach for his gun. He never needed to. His words were his bullets, and he knew how to aim them. My son, he said again, voice smooth as port oil. Every lost sheep bleats the same way before the flock welcomes it back. Don't shame yourself by bleating in front of strangers. Ghost barked a humorless laugh. Sheep? You butchered coal posts like it was a lamb for supper. You called it cleansing, but it was just murder. I've been carrying your lies too long, Cain. The riders stirred uneasily, eyes flicking between Cain and Ghost. They'd followed the preacher for years, but faith cracks fast when one of your own calls a sermon a fraud. Cain tilted his head, smile never faltering. "And what are you now?" he asked softly. "Without me?" A half-broken dog sitting at a rancher's porch. His gaze slid toward me, then back to Ghost. "You think Wade Harrow is your salvation? He'll use you till your blood's spent, then toss your body to the buzzards. I at least gave you purpose." Ghost's pistol rose higher. "Steady now. You gave me chains. Harrow gave me a choice." That was the moment everything teetered. The Seraph's rifles angled just slightly. The townsfolk, hidden behind church doors and cellar lids, prayed the boards would hold. Pike's deputies were nowhere in sight yet. The wire had been sent, but reinforcements take time. It was just me, Ghost, and a street too wide to cross without earning holes in our chests. I stepped forward, slow, hands spread. My voice carried across the dust. "Cain, you've been preaching death so long you've forgotten what it sounds like when a man chooses to live. Ghost chose. And Hickory, Ben won't burn tonight." Cain's smile thinned. Big words from a small rancher. "Tell me, Wade, how many men are hidden behind those shutters, waiting to spring your trap? Dozens? Hundreds?" He leaned forward in his saddle, eyes sharp. "Or is it just you, standing where no man sane would stand?" I didn't blink. "It's enough." For the first time, Cain's mask cracked. His hand twitched toward his holster. The riders saw it. Ghost saw it. The entire street seemed to breathe in, waiting for thunder. Then a sound broke the tension. A small voice, high and steady, from the edge of the boardwalk. "Stop." Lena. She stood barefoot. June clutched her chest, face smudged with soot, but eyes fierce. Somehow, she'd slipped out of the churchyard with the other children. She looked at Cain with a calm that no child should carry. "You killed my town," she said. "You killed my mama, but you don't get to kill me." The Seraphs shifted, unsettled. Cain's lips curled, more snarl than smile now. "And who are you, little lamb, to speak over me?" Lena lifted her chin. "The one who remembers. That's stronger than fire." The word struck harder than any bullet. Even Ghost lowered his pistol an inch, stunned. Cain's face went pale with something close to rage. He snapped his fingers, and half the Seraphs swung their rifles toward her. "Don't!" I shouted, stepping forward. Ghost fired first. His shot cracked the silence like glass. One of the rifles clattered to the dirt, its owner screaming. Chaos erupted. Horses reared. Riders cursed. Bullets tore splinters from porches. Cain wheeled his mount, cloak whipping, and vanished into the smoke of gunpowder before anyone could draw a bead. The Seraphs scattered, some firing wild, some retreating. Ghost and I stood back to back, trading shots, covering Lena as she darted for the doorway of the store. Dusty charged from a hitching rail, hooves striking, scattering men who hadn't expected the horse to join the fight. Within minutes, it was over. The Seraphs, leaderless without Cain's calm hand, broke apart and fled into the twilight. Ghost lowered his smoking pistol, chest heaving. Pike's deputies thundered into town just in time to watch the last of the riders disappear over the ridge. Lena stepped out from the store, June still clutched tight. Her eyes found mine, steady and unshaken. "We're still here," she said. I nodded, throat tight. "Yes, we are." But deep inside, I knew Cain wasn't finished. Men like him never vanish. They retreat, they regroup, they wait for the next sermon. And when he came back, I'd have to be ready to finish what started in Coal Post. The silence in Hickory Bend was so heavy you could hear the flies buzzing over the water trough. Cain sat tall in his saddle at the head of his riders, coat gleaming in the last of the daylight. Behind him, Ghost's pistol trembled slightly in his hand. Not from fear, but from the weight of what it meant to finally turn against a man who had owned his shadow for too long. Cain didn't reach for his gun. He never needed to. His words were his bullets, and he knew how to aim them. "My son," he said again, voice smooth as port oil. "Every lost sheep bleats the same way before the flock welcomes it back. Don't shame yourself by bleating in front of strangers." Ghost barked a humorless laugh. "Sheep? You butchered coal posts like it was a lamb for supper. You called it cleansing, but it was just murder. I've been carrying your lies too long, Cain." The riders stirred uneasily, eyes flicking between Cain and Ghost. They'd followed the preacher for years, but faith cracks fast when one of your own calls a sermon a fraud. Cain tilted his head, smile never faltering. "And what are you now?" he asked softly. "Without me? A half-broken dog sitting at a rancher's porch." His gaze slid toward me, then back to Ghost. "You think Wade Harrow is your salvation? He'll use you till your blood's spent, then toss your body to the buzzards. I, at least, gave you purpose." Ghost's pistol rose higher. "Steady now. You gave me chains. Harrow gave me a choice." That was the moment everything teetered. The Sheriff's rifles angled just slightly. The townsfolk, hidden behind church doors and cellar lids, prayed the boards would hold. Pike's deputies were nowhere in sight yet. The wire had been sent, but reinforcements take time. It was just me, Ghost, and a street too wide to cross without earning holes in our chests. I stepped forward, slow, hands spread. My voice carried across the dust. "Cain, you've been preaching death so long you've forgotten what it sounds like when a man chooses to live. Ghost chose. And hickory, Ben won't burn tonight." Cain's smile thinned. Big words from a small rancher. "Tell me, Wade, how many men are hidden behind those shutters, waiting to spring your trap? Dozens? Hundreds?" He leaned forward in his saddle, eyes sharp. "Or is it just you, standing where no man sane would stand?" I didn't blink. "It's enough." For the first time, Cain's mask cracked. His hand twitched toward his holster. The riders saw it. Ghost saw it. The entire street seemed to breathe in, waiting for thunder. Then a sound broke the tension. A small voice, high and steady, from the edge of the boardwalk. "Stop." Lena. She stood barefoot. June clutched her chest, face smudged with soot, but eyes fierce. Somehow, she'd slipped out of the churchyard with the other children. She looked at Cain with a calm that no child should carry. "You killed my town," she said. "You killed my mama, but you don't get to kill me." The Sheriff shifted, unsettled. Cain's lips curled, more snarl than smile now. "And who are you, little lamb, to speak over me?" Lena lifted her chin. "The one who remembers. That's stronger than fire." The word struck harder than any bullet. Even Ghost lowered his pistol an inch, stunned. Cain's face went pale with something close to rage. He snapped his fingers, and half the Sheriffs swung their rifles toward her. "Don't!" I shouted, stepping forward. Ghost fired first. His shot cracked the silence like glass. One of the rifles clattered to the dirt, its owner screaming. Chaos erupted. Horses reared. Riders cursed. Bullets tore splinters from porches. Cain wheeled his mount, cloak whipping, and vanished into the smoke of gunpowder before anyone could draw a bead. The Sheriffs scattered, some firing wild, some retreating. Ghost and I stood back to back, trading shots, covering Lena as she darted for the doorway of the store. Dusty charged from a hitching rail, hooves striking, scattering men who hadn't expected the horse to join the fight. Within minutes, it was over. The Sheriffs, leaderless without Cain's calm hand, broke apart and fled into the twilight. Ghost lowered his smoking pistol, chest heaving. Pike's deputies thundered into town just in time to watch the last of the riders disappear over the ridge. Lena stepped out from the store, June still clutched tight. Her eyes found mine, steady and unshaken. "We're still here," she said. I nodded, throat tight. "Yes, we are." But deep inside, I knew Cain wasn't finished. Men like him never vanish. They retreat, they regroup, they wait for the next sermon. And when he came back, I'd have to be ready to finish what started in Coal Post. The plain stayed black for days, smoke curling out of the ground like the earth itself was still angry. Everywhere I looked, there were scars, charred fence posts, cattle carcasses, tree skeletons standing like old soldiers who'd lost their battle. Folks from Hickory Bend walked the burnt fields alongside Comanche warriors, dragging out what was dead, trying to salvage what wasn't. For the first time in memory, I saw settlers in red, Mesa working shoulder to shoulder, a rancher and a warrior heaving the same log into a ditch, women trading water skins, pressing cloth into each other's blistered palms. The fire had taken much, but in its hunger it had burned through some of the walls between us. But walls don't fall all at once. They crumble slow. By the third day, whispers started, settlers muttering that maybe the fire had been started on purpose, that Red Mesa wanted them weak. Warriors eyeing the townfolk, thinking maybe they'd lit themselves, blaming the tribe for every scar. Suspicion doesn't die. It just sleeps until someone pokes it awake. Stone Raven was one of those someones. He'd fought hard in the fire, his face streaked with soot, his spear blackened from beating down flames. But now he prowled through the camp like a wolf, voice sharp enough to draw blood. You see, he barked one night by the council fire. We fight beside them, and still they look at us with knives in their eyes. The fire was no accident. It was a sign that we should cleanse them before they cleanse us. Murmurs rose, young warriors nodding. Anger is easier than patience. Iron Elk lifted a hand, but his voice was weary. The fire was the sky's doing. It tested us, and we stood. That is all. Stone Raven's glare cut to me. No, it tested him. He jabbed a finger in my direction. And because he stood, now the settlers think we bend our necks to him. A white rancher teaching us how to fight fire. Next he'll be teaching us how to raise our children. The warriors muttered louder. I felt their eyes on me, sharp as flint. I didn't rise. I didn't shout. I just said, steady as I could, I didn't teach you anything you didn't already know. You beat back that fire because you're men who refuse to die. I just swung a shovel the same as you. But Stone Raven sneered. And yet they call you the hero. Not Iron Elk. Not Red Mesa. You, tell me, rancher, when Cain returns, and he will you stand between us and his bullets? Or will you ride back to your fences and leave us with the graves? The council fire cracked. Iron Elk's face was shadowed, unreadable. Finally, he said, the road is not finished. The fire was only one trial. Another waits, and when it comes, we will see if Callahan stands or falls. The meeting broke, but the air stayed heavy. Some warriors gave me cautious nods. Others looked at me like I was the fire itself, ready to burn them next. Later that night, Lena sat beside me on the porch of the cabin they'd given us at the edge of camp. She hugged June to her chest, eyes fixed on the horizon. Stone Raven hates you, she said matter-of-factly. Yes, I admitted. He'll try to hurt you. Probably. She thought for a long moment, then said, but if he does, he'll have to hurt me too. I looked at her. So small, so fierce. A child with it still smudged on her cheek and fire still burning in her eyes. And I felt something shift in me. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a witness. She carried the story, and stories are heavier than rifles when the time comes. I ruffled her hair gently. No one's going to hurt you, Lena. Not while I'm breathing. But I couldn't shake the truth pressing in from the dark. Stone Raven wasn't the only shadow circling. Cain was still out there, licking his wounds, turning the fire into another verse for his bloody gospel. And when he returned, he'd bring more than words. He'd bring war. The only question was whether Hickory Bend and Red Mesa would stand together, or whether old fears would tear us apart before Cain even lifted a match. The smoke from the great fire had barely cleared when the first new rumor came riding into Hickory Bend. A peddler, the kind who never missed a chance to trade fear for silver, stopped at the saloon and claimed he'd seen riders in black coats gathering near Carrion, Washington, said a tall man, with a preacher's voice was drilling them like soldiers, promising that the next town would fall faster than Coal Post. Nobody said Cain's name out loud. They didn't need to. By sundown, Pike found me repairing fence on the edge of my ranch. His horse was lathered, his eyes lined from too little sleep. The Serifs are moving again, he said. My men are stretched thin, the town skittish, and half the valley still blames the fire on Red Mesa. I leaned on the post, sweat rolling down my back. And Stone Raven? Stirring his own fire, Pike muttered. He's got young blood behind him. Tells him you're Cain's other hand, a white face sent to divide them. Iron Elk's holding steady, but the ground under him is cracking. I knew it was true before Pike said it. You could feel it in the way warriors looked at me. Some with nods of respect, others with suspicion sharp enough to cut. That night, I rode to Red Mesa. The council fire burned low, the air thick with unease. Iron Elk greeted me with a nod, but Stone Raven rose to his feet, eyes flashing in the glow. There he is, he barked, the rancher who brings fire in his pocket and sermons in his mouth. He says he saved us, but what has he truly brought? More enemies, more danger, more graves waiting to be dug. Murmurs rippled through the circle. I didn't answer his rage with my own. I just said, Cain is coming. Not for me, not for you, for all of us. If you let him divide us, he wins without firing a shot. Stone Raven's lip curled. Easy words from a man who will ride back to his cabin when the bullets fly. I was in cold post. I shot back. I saw what Cain left. You'd think I'd stand aside and let Lena become another ash-covered ghost. At her name, silence fell. Lena sat near the edge of the fire. June clutched tight. She rose, small and steady, her voice carrying farther than I thought possible. Mr. Harrow didn't leave me, she said. Cain did. If you fight each other, Cain wins again. If you fight him together, maybe I get keep my home this time. Her words landed heavier than mine ever could. Even Stone Raven blinked, caught between fury and doubt. Iron Elk's voice followed, deep and calm. The child speaks truer than many men. We do not need Cain's fire. We need a road that leads beyond it. But I saw Stone Raven's eyes, and I knew this wasn't finished. 2 nights later, Cain made his move. Not an attack, not yet. A message. We found it at dawn, nailed to the church door in Hickory Bend. A single page, written in neat script. The fire was a warning. The blood will be the cure. On the next Sabbath, the seraphs will cleanse again. Choose now where you stand. No signature. No need. By midday, the town was boiling. Some wanted to arm every man and child, line the rooftops with rifles. Others wanted to flee, pack wagons and vanish before Cain's riders came. Pike tried to calm them, but fear is louder than reason. And across the ridge, in Red Mesa, Stone Raven was making his own speeches. Eli overheard him, came riding fast to tell me. He says Cain is the settler's problem. The boy panted. That Red Mesa should strike first. Burn Hickory Bend before Cain does, so the blame never falls on us. It was madness, but young men listened, and madness wears a crown easily when anger feeds it. That night, Lena asked me, "What will we do?" I looked at her, at June in her arms, at the firelight carving her small face into something older. "We hold," I said. "We hold until Cain shows himself. And when he does, we end this." But deep inside, I knew holding would not be enough. Cain was tightening the noose, and both town and tribe were already struggling for air. The next Sabbath would decide everything. The Sabbath came with a sky the color of hammered iron. Hickory Bend's church bell rang hollow, not in worship, but in warning. The seraphs hadn't ridden in yet, but their shadows stretched long enough to reach every doorstep. Men polished rifles they hadn't touched in years. Women whispered prayers through cracked shutters, and children clutched at skirts with wide, wordless eyes. Across the ridge, Red Mesa gathered in its own fear. Warriors sharpened spears, painted faces, and listened as Stone Raven's voice cut to the smoke of the council fire. "Cain is the settler's plague," he thundered. "But if his fire touches our lodges, they will blame us. Already their sheriff circles with guns. Already their rancher sits among us, poisoning our council with promises that cannot be kept. Why should we wait for Cain's fire when we can strike first? Burn Hickory Bend before the seraphs do, and show the world we are not weak." Shouts rose, hot and eager. Young men stamped spears against the ground. Anger is an easy harvest. I stood outside the circle, Lena at my side, her small hand clutching June so tight the seam strained. My stomach turned heavy. I'd known Stone Raven was dangerous, but now he had the crowd leaning his way. Iron Elk rose, calm as a mountain but tired. His voice rumbled. The road is not walked in haste. We fight Cain, not each other. But Stone Raven shook his head, pointing straight at me. The road? Look who named it. A white man, standing in our fire like he belongs. If we follow him, we follow a ghost. If he truly has the strength to lead, let him prove it here, now. The circle hushed. The challenge was laid, and in their eyes, I saw it. If I refused, I was finished. If I fought, I might be finished anyway. I stepped forward slowly, heart pounding like a drum. If this is what it takes, I said, then let's walk the road together. With our hands, not our words. The warriors spread into a wide ring, stamping the ground. Stone Raven stripped off his shirt, muscles corded, wore paint cracked with sweat. He spun his spear once, planting the butt into the dust. We fight until one yields, he growled, or until the earth decides who it keeps. I handed my hat to Lena. She looked up at me, eyes wide but steady. Don't let him win, she whispered. The circle closed. Stone Raven lunged first, fast and brutal. His fist cracked across my jaw, spinning stars into my eyes. I staggered, tasted blood, then ducked the next blow and slammed my shoulder into his ribs. We crashed into the dust, rolling, fists flying, knees driving. The crowd roared, their voices a storm. He was younger, stronger, trained for this. Every strike rattled my bones. But I'd spent years wrestling cattle that didn't want branding, years working fences in storms that wanted me buried. Stubbornness was my only weapon, and I swung with both fists. He pinned me once, his forearm crushing my throat. The world narrowed to a tunnel. Somewhere beyond the roaring in my ears, I heard Lena's voice, thin but fierce. Get up, Jeb. I bucked, twisted, slammed an elbow into his side. He grunted, grip slipping just enough. I rolled free, scrambled to my knees, and drove a fist square into his mouth. Blood flew, and the circle erupted. We circled, both gasping, sweat and dust painting our faces. Stone Raven spat red into the dirt. You fight like a man already dead. I wiped blood from my lip. No, I fight like a man who doesn't quit. He roared and charged again. This time, I stepped aside, hooked his arm, and threw him hard into the ground. He landed flat. The air punched out of him. I dropped to one knee, fist raised high, then stopped. The crowd leaned forward, waiting for the killing blow. But I opened my hand and pressed it flat against his chest. I don't want your blood, I said loud enough for all to hear. I want your strength. Beside mine, not against it. Stone Raven's chest heaved. His eyes burned with rage, shame, and something else. Doubt. For a long heartbeat, neither of us moved. Then Iron Elk's voice broke the silence. The challenge is met. Callahan stands. The ring erupted, some in cheers, some in anger. Stone Raven shoved me off, rising to his knees, blood dripping from his mouth. He didn't yield with words, but the earth had spoken. Lena darted in, clutching June in one arm and wrapping the other around my waist. You stood, she whispered. I staggered to my feet, chest burning, vision swimming. We all have to, kid, I murmured, but inside, I knew this wasn't the end. I had won the circle, but Cain was still out there, gathering his seraphs. The real fight hadn't even begun. The bruises from Stone Raven's fist hadn't even turned yellow before the next shadow fell across the valley. Word rode fast from the south. Cain was moving again, not with whispers this time, but with thunder. 100 riders, maybe more, riding under his black coats, sweeping cattle off ranches, burning line shacks, leaving scraps of scripture nailed to fence posts like grave markers. By the time I heard, the townsfolk of Hickory Bend had already holed up behind barricades, rifles bristling from windows. Red Mesa gathered at the canyon rim, warriors restless, waiting for Iron Elk's word. The valley was a powder keg, and Cain was bringing the match. I stood with Iron Elk on a bluff overlooking the plains. Dust plumes smeared the horizon. Cain's seraphs, moving with the precision of soldiers, not raiders. He wasn't here to harass. He was here to finish. Iron Elk's face was carved from stone, but his voice carried weight. The council is split. Some say we ride to meet Cain, and crush him before he reaches the town. Others say we let the settlers burn, then strike what's left. Stone Raven waits for my word, and so do the young men who follow him. And you? I asked. He looked at me, eyes old but unyielding. I say we wait for truth, but truth is a hard horse to saddle. That night, as fires flickered across the Comanche camp and fear gnawed at Hickory Bend's walls, Cain came, not in flesh, but in words. He rode to the edge of town with two men carrying torches, their silhouettes tall against the night. His voice carried like a bell. People of Hickory Bend, people of Red Mesa, you hide behind walls and lies. But the Lord has chosen me to cleanse this valley. Tomorrow at dawn, I will ride through your streets. Those who kneel will be spared. Those who resist will be purged. Choose your salvation tonight. Then he wheeled his horse and vanished into the dark, leaving his promise hanging heavy as smoke. The town trembled. Some wanted to flee. Others wanted to beg for mercy. Still others demanded a stand. At Red Mesa, Stone Raven roared that this was proof that settlers brought nothing but fire and Cain was only their echo. His followers clamored for blood. And me? I felt the ground sliding under my boots. We couldn't fight, Cain divided. If settlers fired first, warriors would see betrayal. If Red Mesa struck first, the town would blame them forever. Either way, Cain won. So I did the only thing I knew how to do. I stepped into the fire before it burned us all. At dawn, I rode out into the empty space between Hickory Bend and Cain's riders. Dusty's hooves thudded soft against the packed earth. The valley was silent, but for the creak of leather and the distant clatter of rifles being cocked. Cain sat at the front of his seraphs, tall and calm, coat gleaming. His smile was colder than dawn. "Ah, the rancher," he said. "Come to kneel?" "No," I answered. "Come to speak." He tilted his head, amused. "Then speak. I'll let the valley hear your last sermon before I give mine." I turned in the saddle so both sides could hear. Townsfolk on one ridge, Red Mesa on the other. Lena stood behind the barricades, June in her arms, her eyes locked on me. Stone Raven scowled in the shadows, itching for a reason to strike. "You call this cleansing," I said, my voice rough but steady. "But you burned Coal Post, and I saw no salvation in ashes. You threaten Hickory Bend, and all I see is fear. You speak of God, but your God feeds only on smoke and blood. Maybe some men believe you, but I don't, and neither does this valley, not anymore." Cain smiled thin, but his voice stayed calm. Bold words from a man standing alone. Then a second voice cut through, fierce and clear. "He's not alone." Lena, she had climbed onto the barricade, standing small but unshaken, her soot-dark hair whipping in the wind. "He saved me when you burned my town," she shouted. "He fed me when I was starving. You call him lost, but he's the only one who found me. You're no preacher. You're just a killer with a book." The valley froze. Warriors shifted. Settlers murmured. Even some of Cain's riders looked uneasy. Cain's eyes narrowed, venom flashing. Silenced the girl. But Ghost was faster. He spurred his horse forward, pistol raised, voice hard as iron. No more silencing Cain. Not her. Not me. Not anyone. The seraphs wavered, torn between fear of Cain and a crack in his armor. I felt the moment teetering, the knife edge where a valley could fall into slaughter or into something else. I raised my hand. If Cain wants blood, he'll have to ride through me first. But know this. If you follow him, you'll die for nothing. If you walk away, today can be the last day he writes your story. After this, you get to write your own. Cain's face twisted, fury finally breaking through his calm mask. He drew his revolver, raising it toward me. For a heartbeat, the world stopped, and then the valley chose. For a heartbeat, the whole valley held still. Cain's revolver leveled at my chest, his riders poised behind him, the settlers' rifles glinting on the rooftops of Hickory Bend, Red Mesa's warriors shifting at the canyon rim. The next breath could decide whether the valley lived or died. Cain's voice cut the silence. "This land belongs to the fire, and I am a hand that carries the torch." He squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked like thunder. But it wasn't me who fell. Ghost had ridden in hard, his pistol already raised. His bullet caught Kane's wrist, twisting the preacher's shot wide. The round tore a splinter from the fence post beside me instead of my heart. Kane screamed, his revolver tumbling into the dust. In that instant, the spell broke. The Seraphs faltered, looking at their leader writhing in pain. And then the valley roared. Settlers poured from their barricades, rifles blazing, not at Red Mesa, but at the Seraphs. Warriors from the ridge swept down like storm clouds, spears flashing, war cries splitting the dawn. For the first time, town and tribe fought the same enemy, not each other. Kane shouted for his men to hold, but the fire was gone from his words. Ghost rode to their ranks like a man possessed, his pistol spitting flame, his face twisted with years of chained loyalty burning away in one final act of defiance. Eli fought at his side, shouting directions, cutting men down who only days earlier had called him brother. I swung down from Dusty and dragged Lena behind the barricade, pressing her small frame against the boards. "Stay down," I told her. She shook her head fiercely. "Not if you fall." The fight raged around us, brutal and loud. Seraphs broke against a combined fury of settlers and warriors, some fleeing, some cut down in the dust. Pike fought like a man who'd carried too many coffins, his revolver steady, his jaw clenched. Iron Elk rode at the front of his people, lance flashing like lightning. Even Stone Raven, blood still fresh from our challenge, fought beside me, his eyes burning with a grudging respect. Kane staggered to his feet, clutching his ruined wrist. His eyes found me through the smoke, and for the first time I saw fear in them. He reached for a fallen rifle, raising it clumsily. Before he could fire, Lena stepped from behind a barricade. June clutched in her arm. Her small voice rang out, sharp and steady. "No more fire." Every head turned. Even Kane froze, stunned that a child's voice could carry so much command. In that pause, Ghost fired once more. Kane's body jerked, then crumpled into the dust, his black coat folding around him like the wings of a broken crow. Silence fell. The remaining Seraphs looked at each other, at Kane's body, at the valley united against them. Then, one by one, they dropped their rifles. Some fled, some surrendered. The battle was done. Lena ran to me, burying her face in my chest. I held her tight, the smell of smoke and sweat thick in my nose. "It's over," I whispered. "You're safe now." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. Safety is never permanent. Out here, peace is a road you build one step at a time. In the days that followed, Red Mesa and Hickory Bend buried their dead side by side. The ground took both, without caring what color their skin had been. And in that shared grief, something like kinship began. Iron Elk and Pike spoke together, not as enemies, but as men who had bled on the same dirt. Even Stone Raven, though he never softened his glare, walked away from me without reaching for his spear. That was victory enough. As for Ghost, he vanished before dawn on the third day. Eli said he left without a word, heading west where the land has more silence than judgment. Maybe he was chasing redemption. Maybe he was running from it. Either way, I let him go. Some men can't be caged by forgiveness. Lena stayed. She slept by my hearth, learned the boards that didn't creak, the cupboards that whispered safe. She grew stronger every day, and sometimes I catch her teaching June new tricks, as though the ragdoll were a child that needed raising too. One evening, as the sun sank red over the mesa, she asked me, "Will Kane come back?" I looked out the horizon, where the wind bent the grass and the scars of fire still lay black. "Men like Kane always come back," I said. Then I bent down, met her eyes, and added, "But when they do, they'll find us ready." Because the valley had learned something that no fire, no sermon, no preacher could burn away. That survival wasn't about standing apart. It was about standing together. And for the first time since Coal Post, I believe we might just have a chance. And that's where our story ends. A rancher who chose mercy, a child who carried memory, and a valley that found strength in standing together. If this tale stayed with you, drop your thoughts in the comments and let me know what part struck you most. Don't forget to rate the story. And if you'd like more journeys like this, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next ride. Until next time, stay safe, Keep your fire burning bright. And remember, even the smallest kindness can change everything.